Those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We turn now to a Democracy Now! Exclusive. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has just entered his third year inside Ecuador's embassy in London, where he has political asylum. Assange faces investigations in both Sweden and the United States. Here in the U.S., a secret grand jury is investigating WikiLeaks for its role in publishing a trove of leaked documents about the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, as well as State Department cables. In Sweden, he's wanted for questioning on allegations of sexual misconduct, though no charges have been filed. Late last week, there was the first break in the Swedish case in 2 years. A Swedish court announced it would hold a hearing July 16th over a request by his lawyers for prosecutors to hand over new evidence and withdraw the arrest warrant. Well, late last night, we flew back to New York after interviewing Julian Assange inside the embassy. Ecuadorian embassy in London, where Julian Assange is holed up. He's been here for just over 2 years, just celebrated his 43rd birthday inside the embassy. Here you can see the British police, and right in front of me is the balcony where Julian Assange has come out and addressed his supporters and addressed the media. The Ecuadorian flag hangs from that balcony. As to when Julian Assange will come out, well, he is concerned if he steps foot outside, he will be arrested by the British police. So for now, he's inside, this nomad of the digital age. We're in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, where Julian Assange took refuge 2 years ago. He's been detained in Britain for close now to 4 years. Welcome to Democracy Now!, Julian.
Thank you, Amy.
How are you doing here? It's been over 2 years that you have really not seen daylight for any extended period of time.
It's been nearly 4 years that I've been detained without charge in one form or another here in the United Kingdom, first in prison for solitary confinement, then under house arrest for about 18 months, and now 2 years here in the embassy. The Ecuadorian government gave me political asylum in relation to the ongoing national security investigation by the DOJ, the Department of Justice in the United States, into our publications and also into sourcing efforts. So did I enter into a conspiracy with Chelsea Manning, who was sentenced last year to 35 years in prison? So the question as to how I'm doing, of course, personally it's a difficult situation in a variety of ways. I would say that when someone's in this position, what you are most concerned about is the interruption of your family relationships. So because of the security situation, that's made it very hard for my children and my parents. But if we look at the bigger picture, WikiLeaks as an organization has survived that attack by the US government, and we've gone on to do further work, and some quite significant work. Unlike many media organizations, during that period we have not gone bankrupt, despite a worldwide extrajudicial banking blockade by Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, and so on. And none of our members of staff have been fired. So I think if you went back and said to yourself, what are the chances that a small investigative publisher could publish this information about the Iraq War and the State Department and the Afghanistan War and many other documents about Guantanamo and enter into conflict with the United States government in a very serious way? Would they still be publishing? Would their people be in prison? And you would think probably yes. But actually, we have managed to mostly overcome, apart from my situation here, the barriers that have been put up against us.
So July 16th is a significant date. You are wanted in 2 investigations, or you're being investigated by the U.S. government because, as you said, of WikiLeaks, of exposing many documents, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. How many would you say? Around the Iraq War.
8 million so far.
8 million. Around the Iraq War, around the Afghanistan War, and cables of the State Department that go back for decades. You're also wanted by Sweden on for questioning, often misstated as because you've been charged, for questioning around sexual misconduct. And July 16th is a big date in that case. Why?
While most of our resources have been concerned with the ongoing US investigation and pending prosecution, which the DOJ admits to in its court filing of the 25th of April this year, continues, the Swedish investigation has obstructed my asylum. So the United Kingdom says, look, there's this questioning warrant that Sweden has put out for you. They may have dropped the case, which they did, and re-raised it, but nonetheless there's this questioning warrant. And therefore we say you cannot go to Ecuador to accept asylum until we've extradited you to Sweden. Now, that is actually a violation of international law. The international law is quite clear. Asylum trumps extradition because of the nature of the relationships with the UN and the 1951 Asylum Convention. So every time we get some traction publicly and politically in the US case, people say, oh no, the whole thing is really about the Swedish case. So it's quite important to deal with the Swedish matter and kind of show it for what it is and that it should be dropped. There has been no movement, although the Swedish government is obligated to somehow progress the situation. They've been very happy to keep it in a complete stasis. They've refused to come here to speak to me here or pick up a telephone or to accept an affidavit. They've also refused to provide a guarantee that I will not be extradited to the United States if I offered to go to Sweden. So that situation means we have to tackle the Swedish matter, it seems, in Sweden. The only other alternative is perhaps going to the International Court of Justice in relation to the asylum. Anyway, so it'll be the first date in nearly 4 years that the matter has been heard about in Sweden. And my lawyers are confident that either in the lower court and more likely the appeal court, we will be able to dismiss the case because the law is reasonably clear. You're meant to proceed with, the Swedish government has an obligation under its own law to proceed with maximum speed, with minimum cost, and also with bringing the minimum suspicion on the person who's been investigated. And it is in clear violation of all those points of law.
This hearing that will take place on July 16th is a result of an appeal by your Swedish lawyers. Why didn't they appeal before?
Well, several things have happened in the interim. Because of the abuses in this case and some other cases, new European law was introduced and pulled in and enacted in Sweden. And it was meant to be enacted by June the 1st this year. It wasn't, but by July the 1st, it should have come on board, so just recently. So that new legislation permits people who are suspects, who had their liberty deprived in some way, to be able to access evidence that shows that they're innocent. And so we understand that there's a significant evidence that was collected by the police that show that I'm innocent. And they have thus far refused to hand it over, but this new European law means that they have to hand it over. In
affidavits that I have read, your lawyers were allowed to see text messages of the women who have accused you.
Well, it's hard to. You have to be careful in saying that they have accused me, because actually, when you read their correspondence and their early statements, they don't say that at all. In fact, they say that they didn't accuse me and that the police took the matter and the state accused me, that they didn't want any charges, that they weren't filing a formal complaint. That's what they say in those text messages.
Your lawyers weren't able to get copies of them at this point, but they were allowed to look at them. One of them saying something like, I did not want to put any charges on Julian Assange, but that the police were keen on getting a grip on him.
Yeah, and that she was railroaded into things and really did not, she did not want what occurred to occur.
So you were questioned in Sweden originally, and the chief prosecutor actually, is it the prosecutor who dropped the case against you?
The chief prosecutor of Stockholm reviewed the material very early on in the case and dropped the rape complaint. dropped it, said it's not that I don't believe what the women say, but there's just no evidence that any crime has been committed. And so the matter was dropped. Then subsequently, a senior Swedish politician, Claes Borgström, who was running for election, then took it to Gothenburg, a city which has nothing to do with the case, and resurrected it under another prosecutor.
And so what could happen on July 16th?
The options for them, they can dismiss it, they can say that the law is unclear and ask maybe a European Court of Justice to give clarity on this new European law and how it is to be implemented.
There's also a law here that was just passed in Britain that seems to have come about as a result of your case. Unfortunately, you're not protected under it.
That's a very important development. So as a result of the abuses in my case, which were seen by the Supreme Court, there was a split in the Supreme Court.
Here in Britain?
Here in Britain. And subsequently, the Cambridge Journal of Comparative Law wrote 2 papers about what had happened. And there's a lot of concern about this idea that you could extradite someone without even charging them. So political pressure, there was a backbench revolt in the British Parliament, principally amongst the Conservative backbench, that this was, that any police officer in Europe could just ask for someone in the UK to be extradited without it going before a court, without them being charged. And so new legislation was introduced to prevent that happening. So no more extradition without charge from the UK. But there was then debate that, well, will this in fact protect Assange? And so a specific clause was entered into it that it will not be retrospective for those people where the court has decided that they will be extradited, but they haven't been extradited yet, which just applies to me.
WikiLeaks founder and editor Julian Assange inside the Ecuadorian embassy in London, where he has been holed up for more than 2 years. When we come back in this sit-down interview, I talk to Assange about my interview with the Swedish Foreign Minister Carl Bildt about Assange's case, and I get Assange's response to former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's comments calling for Edward Snowden to come back to the United States to face a trial. We also learn how Assange helped facilitate Snowden's departure from Hong Kong. All that and more coming up. Stay with us.